Hello, everyone. Welcome back to I See What You're Saying, the Disciplined Listening Podcast. I'm Michael Reddington, and today it is my pleasure to welcome our next guest, Angela Gala. Angela walked away from a very successful career, running a high-profile event planning and production firm after experiencing the profound impacts of mindfulness meditation. The impact she experienced in her own personal life after she began practicing mindfulness meditation were so significant that she decided to dedicate her career to bringing those same experiences and benefits to as many people as she could. As such, she is now a senior instructor with Charlotte Meditation and co-founded a nonprofit called Youth Meditation, where she brings all of the benefits and experiences associated with mindfulness meditation to children from high trauma environments. I was very excited to have this conversation so I could learn more about applying meditation in my life. And I'm very happy to share with you all of Angela's experiences, lessons, and ideas. And thank you so much for being here with us today. And our conversation is going to take many different tracks as we go through it, including walking through both the active and passive elements of meditation, how we can use meditation to break our unconscious patterns, the importance of finding our own answers, how we can use meditation to slow time down, and how mindfulness meditation can help lead people to experiencing a greater sense of self-reliance and freedom. It was a wonderful conversation, and I'm very excited to share it with all of you today. Thank you so much for being here for another episode. And before we get started, as always, we want to quickly thank our sponsors. First, we have humantel.com. If you have not already, please head over to humantel.com and check out their library of online self-paced training for how we can begin to determine what people are likely thinking and feeling in real time by identifying shifts in emotion through their facial expressions and nonverbal behavior. All of their training is scientifically backed. I've done it myself. I highly recommend it. While you're there, enter the code INQUASIVE25 for 25% off all of their online training over at humantel.com. For the professional interviewers, please check out certifiedinterviewer.com. That's where you can have all your questions answered about the International Association of Interviewers, who qualifies to become a member, what are the organizational and individual benefits, the online and in-person educational opportunities, the interviewer resources and networking opportunities that are available, all that and so much more. That is also where you can find out more about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. What does it take to qualify for the designation? How do people earn the designation? And once they have earned it, what does it take to maintain the designated status throughout your career? What can it mean for you and your career moving forward? All of that and more at certifiedinterviewer.com. And finally, while you're online, please head over to inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the customized programs our clients ask us to facilitate to their senior leadership, sales teams, and HR teams to teach them the strategic observation and persuasive communication skills necessary to encourage people to share sensitive information under vulnerable circumstances and in the face of consequences, so we all can achieve the relationships and outcomes that we desire. Thank you so much for being here. Once again, we appreciate you being here week after week. And now, without further ado, I introduce to you, Angela Gala. Good morning, Angela. It is so great to see you again. How are you?
Good morning, Michael. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And I'm really excited that you volunteered to have this conversation today. Thank you so much. When we met and I heard a little bit about what you do and your approach, especially with kids, which we'll get to at some point in this conversation, I was really, really fascinated by it. Now I'm happy to have the opportunity to share it with everybody else.
Yeah.
So to get started, I guess the first question I would like to ask is just sort of based on kind of stereotypes or maybe not misinformation, but assumptions that people have out there about what you do. So to just kind of set the stage for everybody, from your perspective, functionally speaking, what does it truly mean to meditate?
Sure. Well, first, I want to say thank you for having me and thank you for your curiosity on this topic. Curiosity is very valuable, particularly when it comes to this practice. And what it is a practice. And meditation, from our point of view, is simply the practice of allowing your body and your mind to remember the state of real relaxation. The definition of relaxation is freedom from tension. When's the last time you experienced that?
How much time do I have? It's been a while.
Yeah. Yeah, for most of us. So we call it a practice because it is a practice. It's something you have to allow. And it's something that the body knows innately. You kind of came into the world that way. And then the rest of the world showed up and kind of told you what it was. So relaxation is a process. It's a practice of doing that and allowing it to happen. And that's
I,
medicine.
I love that juxtaposition of practicing it and allowing it to happen, because it sounds like it's active and passive at the same time. Like, I have to really work at it. I have to put the effort into it. But as I'm putting effort into accomplishing something, I also have to allow it to happen and let it happen. And I imagine when we're looking for that freedom from tension, different people get there in their own way, at their own rates, in their own sort of style or paths. Is that a correct-ish assumption?
Yes. One of the things I noticed about you when we first met was how well you listen and how easily you pull out something that's super important. And it is active and it is passive. So, but what you can't have is a goal. You can't ask something of it, because as soon as you sit down to meditate and you're asking something of it, please relieve me of this stress, or I'm going to sit down and I'm my goal, I'm going to relax, I'm going to do this well. You're not relaxed in that state, right? But when you approach it as, this is a gift I'm going to give myself, and I've got 10 minutes to sit here, and there's nothing I have to do, and there's no one I have to think about, and there's nothing I have to think about. I'm going to think, and that's okay. I'm just going to allow it, and it's going to be all right. I'm just going to relax. That's it. And it does show up differently for everyone. When I give introductions to meditation, some people have a profound experience of relaxation. Other people, their minds are on the hamster wheel. And neither of those two things are wrong. It's an individual journey, it's an individual experience. None of it is wrong. And I think that that's something that is a misunderstanding, that you can do it right, that you could clear your mind. You can't do those things. It's kind of like, when you were a kid, if you went to church or you went to somewhere with your mom that was somber and you weren't supposed to laugh, that something funny happened. It's funnier when you're not supposed to laugh. It's kind of the same thing. If you want to stop thinking, your brain's going to make sure that you hear it. It's going to come back stronger. You can't push that away. But what you can do is just say, hey, I'm going to stay here. I'm going to relax and I'm going to notice what happens. And whatever it is going to be okay.
I appreciate that explanation on several levels. I think you just helped me identify one of the reasons why I struggle with it, or I feel like I struggle with it, is because you can't have a goal. And I'm not the world's most goal-oriented person, don't get me wrong, but I do tend to try to tie outcomes into lots of things that I do. Like, am I doing it for a reason? And if I am, what's the reason? And so if I am trying to calm down, it's typically because I am trying to accomplish something. And having that outcome in mind, or that goal in mind, could be one of the things that's hampering my approach. And I think also the fact that, to your point, you just made it, the more I try to quiet my mind down, the less quiet it gets. And maybe the funniest example I have is like when I can't fall asleep.
Oh, we all have that. And it's not funny.
And the harder I try to fall asleep, the more awake I get. And I can feel myself getting angry. And I know it's not productive, but
Yeah.
here I am trying to fall asleep and just getting angrier and angrier and more awake and more awake. So I feel like that's a good analogy to bring the two together. So thank you for giving me a little bit of hope back from my personal process. But I imagine too, the individual aspects of the journey make it more difficult to teach. Am I unfair to assume that people come to you and they say, teach me how to do it? Like step 1 through 10. What am I supposed to do? How do I get there? Teach me. And because it is so intensely personal, it's going to be different for everybody. And I imagine that makes your job harder.
Well, it's interesting for you to say that one of the reasons, so we teach a course in our studio and it's always one-on-one. In the studio, if you come to us and you want to learn meditation, it is 8 weeks. There's no kind of skirting that. And it is one-on-one, instructor and client. And the interesting piece to this is that it is personal. And I won't say that makes it harder to teach. We see a lot of people in the studio, we're all 90% kind of the same, but it shows up for everyone differently. That's actually the beauty of it, because in the process, we're learning together. So I have guidance because I've been through it myself. I've been doing this for 16 years and I still learn. And when I'm with another person, I'm not only learning about them, I'm learning about myself. I see myself in that other person. And so we're learning together. But what we're helping them to do is get past the roadblocks their mind wants to throw up. So, what are my unconscious patterns? It's easier for an objective person to see what those patterns are than for us to see it. It's easier for my teacher to see mine than it is for me to see mine sometimes. But that's what meditation's all about. All of a sudden, I start to see mine. So we have a process of teaching. There is a very stepped way of doing it. And in the process comes the answers. Each person, whether you like it or not, you have your own answers. And nobody likes that, because I don't want to think that I have it because I can't get to it. I just need somebody to tell me and then I got it. Especially Westerners, because it is about the end game. It's all about the goal. It's all about the outcomes. This is not that. And you know, from what you do, again, one of the reasons why I love your process and how you talk about and describe your listening process is, yes, you have a goal in mind. And your goal really hit home with me because your goal is the truth. And if that's what you're after, meditation's the way to get there. And it will be yours. It won't be mine. All we are the way showers. And we're showing you how to get to it, to what you already know. Does that make sense?
It does. And I really like the term the way showers. I like that a lot. Got me really thinking with the unconscious patterns. There's no doubt that I have them and we all have them. And sometimes when we identify them, it's too late. Like, had I realized that ahead of time, I would have handled this differently. I would have done this differently, or I needed to have, typically it's unsatisfactory outcomes in similar situations. I need them to pile up in order for me to recognize the pattern. So I certainly appreciate that. And I, I love for the allowing for the individual aspects to the steps. So yeah, there's a process to follow, but it's, here's the road you're going to take. You take them in the time that you want, in the order that you want, stay on them as long as you want. Like, this is how to get there, but you chart that out. And I also found it powerful when you said we have the answers whether we like it or not, because you're right. I try not to live a life where it's like, get it now, get it fast. Like, no, let's do it right. But if I get stuck on something, if I get frustrated with something, if I go to somebody for something, confession, it's because I just want them to tell me how to do it. I want them to save me the time and the stress and just solve the riddle for me. That's why we go to teachers. So to me, it makes perfect sense that somebody would go to you and your group and say, teach me how to meditate, only for them to spin their heads in circles when you say, oh, you will teach yourself, but here's how we do it.
Well, we don't normally say that, because that is kind of, it's kind of a showstopper for some people. What happens when they come to us and we just teach them how to sit and how to be, and we can do that with them. So we're not We're not driving toward a goal ourselves. We're just in this relaxed state with them to help them there. And as we kind of show them how to sit and relax and that process and lead them to it, it's generally what they experience that brings them back. So it's in the experience that brings them back. We can talk about it all day long. We can try and intellectualize it, which we do extremely well. And I keep coming back to this, so I need to say it. I want to address something that you said that, if I had known, I would have done this differently. And I need them to pile up. That's not just you. And that's learning and that's life. And these lessons come back to us in a lot of different ways, right? Different scenarios. Like we didn't see that it was the same lesson that time because the scenario was completely different until after it happened. And that's okay. If everything, and you have a very entrepreneurial mind, so I know you'll understand this. If we think about these things as an entrepreneur would think about these things, it's all learning. It's all growth. So there's no self-recrimination, there's no beating oneself up. If we unconsciously hurt somebody, we can make amends for that. If we consciously did it, we need to now we kind of need to take another look in and kind of get to the place where we can say, yeah, man, sorry I did that. But again, all of these things, we're all growing and bumping up against each other in that effort. It makes sense?
It does. It definitely
There's
makes
no
sense.
room to shame ourselves for it.
And
That just keeps us there.
yeah, and staying there, I imagine, is the problem for a lot. It's certainly the problem. One of the problems for me, just staying there and not letting my mind go somewhere else. Yeah, you mentioned earlier misconceptions. I think was the word that you might have used. If not, it was related to that word. Um, so as we've been talking, you've already, and we've talked before, you've already helped me overcome a few lingering misconceptions that I still had, even though that we had previously spoken. I would imagine that when people typically are first introduced to meditation or when they first hear about meditation, they have stereotypes or, like you said, misconceptions that can run the gamut from it takes people with a real intense ability to focus to be successful to, on the other hand, maybe it's hokey or, somewhere in the middle. What do you find are the misconceptions that most people bring into your studio, if that's the right word for it, and then kind of the awakening or aha moments that they have as they work through them?
Yeah. So a lot of people come in, I can't do it. I'm just not built that way. I can't meditate. And I'm not, unless there's some really tough mental issues. And I don't mean like depression and anxiety, those sorts of things. I mean, something kind of more hardwired.
Sure.
Um, Most people can do this.
Mhm.
I mean, really 90% of the population can do this. It's the I can't do this, but they come to us because something's got to give. And or I want more. I know there's more out there. I don't know how to get to it because I've been goal oriented my whole life and about the outcomes and I've gotten all the outcomes. What's this hole? What am I missing? Right? The other misconception would be religion. And that's a big one. And some of those folks come in because they're still curious. But oftentimes they don't even come in, right? Because they see it as against their religion or some kind of mystical practice, or it's all based Eastern. But the reality of it is, all religions have adopted some form of meditation as part of their practice because this is very essentially human. And what we teach is very secular. It doesn't negate any religion, neither does it uphold any religion. And once what we're teaching is felt, I think there's a release of that. And as we go through it, there's one other misconception. Some people are concerned about cultishness.
Mhm.
There is that ancient kind of practice of sadhus in India where they have followers, right? The guru has followers. That is not what we teach. We don't want followers. What we're teaching is all toward independence, self reliance, independence. This isn't about us.
I like that. I like that a lot. When you were talking earlier, you mentioned teaching people even how to sit.
Yeah.
And I had to laugh at myself a little bit when you said that because you facilitated a meeting between Ranjit and I.
Yeah.
And so I went in and I met him at the studio. And of course, we said hello and he offered, welcomed me to come in and sit down. And I've got a bad back, an all the way bad back.
Yeah.
So I sit down and I'm trying to figure out how I'm supposed to sit and what's going to be offensive or what's going to be proper, or is he going to think I'm being disrespectful? And like everything from my lower back to my ankles hurts. And that's not like about the exercise itself. It's the current
Right.
condition my body is in. I had an MRI this morning. Like I'm just not in good physical shape at the moment. So when you said teaching people how to sit, I immediately started laughing at myself. Like, I'm pretty sure I spent the first minute and a half listening to Ranjit, wondering if I was offending him based on how I was trying to figure out how to sit. But I want to come back to follow up to that and ask, what is, or is there a posture that helps facilitate earning that or attaining that freedom of tension?
So I want to answer that question, but first I want to address something else that you mentioned about offending him, right? He's so Ranjit is my teacher for those that don't know, and he's the owner of the studio where I work, and he has this presence about him, and it's not what we're used to, and we don't know, is there some kind of pageantry to this? Is there something that's supposed to be done? But once you meet him, you recognize he's accepting of everything. You couldn't offend him if you tried.
Well, don't challenge me.
You can try. I will challenge you and assure you that it's not possible to offend him. I can't tell you the number of things people have said to him. He is fully, and I don't think I've met another human like this in person. He is fully in charge of himself, his emotions, and his thoughts. No one moves him. He does not get moved. Um, so he's 86. He's been doing this a hot minute, right? Um, but what I wanted really to point out is how we mostly are, and I still, after 16 years, I'll find myself in this, but I catch it, right? We're self-conscious. What are other people thinking about me? And from your perspective, you've got this super good heart and you're concerned about offending another person, being polite, all the things, right? You grew up with manners and all the things, and we all are brought up differently. Um, that self-consciousness keeps us from connecting, like truly, truly connecting. And this is one of those practices that will allow that to release. That makes sense? And
No,
yours is good-hearted because your concern was for him, right? But I don't want him to think this about me. And the reality is we have no control what anybody thinks about us anyway, right? Ever.
that's pretty true. Yeah,
Ever,
that's
ever.
pretty true.
So proper position. So the only thing that in our practice, mindfulness meditation, there's probably 108 different kinds of meditations. I know this one because it's how I learned, right? Um, in this one, we always sit with our back up straight because we always start with the breath. The breathing is super important. The breath work is how we relieve the nervous system. Our minds and our bodies are connected. And if the mind is worked up, the body's feeling it, whether you know it or not, right? That's why illnesses that are a result of stress are so huge. So when we breathe, we're relieving that nervous system, we're relaxing the nervous system, and the body is telling the mind, hey, we're okay. And so the mind can calm down. So they're connected and it works both ways. So it's important to sit with your back up straight, not rigid, but straight and relaxed. The other thing that's important, you can sit crisscross, you can sit in a chair with your feet on the floor, hands. Oftentimes you'll see this. In India, these are called mudras, but we do this for one reason only. Because your nervous system is like an electrical circuit, we're closing the loop of your energy. So we sit like this, or hands down on your thighs, or like this, clasped together in your lap. Either way, it's all performing the same function. All of those work. So that's kind of up to you. But those are the important things about the posture.
Got it. Um, Random story that I was thinking about when you would, so I have scoliosis. I was diagnosed with it when I was in the elementary school for sure. I think the third grade, but don't quote me on that.
Right?
And I remember when I was a teenager, I went and tried a karate class. Don't hold it against me. And at the end, they did like kind of that, sit in a meditative posture. Well, it's very difficult for me to sit up completely straight. Like I can do it, but I kind of really have to hold it. And then it kind of wait, like my back is crooked and I'm kind of tilted and all this stuff. And so I was having a really difficult time sitting in that posture. And so I don't want to say they yelled at me for it, but I got like scolded for not sitting in the proper posture. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you never. And that was the last time I went back there. And when you're talking about Ranjit's presence and the way he conducts conversations, when I left that meeting with him, which was tremendously insightful and interesting, which is no surprise to you, I called my wife. I was going straight to the airport and she asked how it was. And I said, that might have been the toughest conversation I've ever participated in. She's like, really? Why? And like and I mean this in a very positive way for people that are listening. And Ranjit, when you listen to this, I mean this in the most positive way possible. But it's like every norm or expectation for how long somebody would pause. Oh no, he's still going to say something. Like I just cut him off. I needed to wait longer to like I maintain a lot of eye contact. I've been told I maintain too much eye contact. I'm pretty sure he looked at me for an hour straight without looking away. Like so, like little things like pauses and eye contact and pace and all of these things that I had to learn to adjust to throughout the conversation. So even like outside of what he taught me from just asking him about mindful meditation and all he shared, even just the experience of talking with him was educational learning to adapt to that. But like you said, he's been doing this for a lifetime. So I'm sure that's part of how he is adjusted to allow everything to happen around him and then thoughtfully react, respond, interact with everything that's taking place.
So yes, but Ranjit's process is an intuitive one. So for him, it's about presence, full presence. Okay. So presence being in the present on purpose without judgment. And he is able to maintain that throughout his day, throughout his life. And when someone shows up that way, it can be really intense, right? Because he's fully present with you. And that's an intense gaze when someone's holding that kind of presence. But it's also quite lovely. And time slows down, right? And that's why we catch ourselves in our own energy. And every now and then I still interrupt him and go, "Damn it." Because when he speaks, it's this, he takes time and he takes time for the words to sink in. And sometimes I still don't understand what he was trying to tell me until a day later. And I'm like, oh, that's why he told me that story. Nothing he says is not on purpose. It's all on purpose, but it's this intuitive process because he is fully present with you. And that's kind of a requirement to teach this. If you be that, you can't teach it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm going to clip out part of this and show it. Well, I mean, hopefully everybody I know listens to the whole conversation, right? But just to be sure, there's something you just said that I definitely want to clip out on how being present can feel intense. Is I feel like sometimes when you are really paying attention to like the proverbial any of us, when we're really paying attention to somebody, when we're locked in, we probably are maybe leaning forward. We probably are making more eye contact. Our body probably is still because we're more focused. We probably have been quiet for a little while because we're taking this all in and trying to figure out where it's going. And if the topic is emotional or intense or has any of these other feelings associated with it, that factors into it. So a lot of the old like traditional, which we could have another conversation about, active listening behaviors like smile, nod, use gestures, repeat back, all those things. That's kind of how we were taught to show that we're being present, and it can be helpful. But if we're seriously locked into what somebody else is saying and withholding judgment,
That's right.
that means there's going to be little to no emotion being shown because I'm not judging anything I'm being told right now. I'm accepting it for what it is. And then I'm looking to help move the topic, the emotion, the relationship, whatever it is, forward. So I love that you just correlated true presence with the feeling of intensity. I think that I've not heard somebody say it that way before, and it is so true.
And I think it's more intense for the other person. What I know about it, when I am fully present with someone and non-judgmental and non-reactive, for me, it's a relief. It may feel more intense for them.
Mhm.
Makes sense? But at the same time, I think it depends. It's situational. When I'm with kids or other people in the studio, um, even asking children, when's the last time you really felt listened to? And I'll never forget a fourth grader saying, "Oh, yeah." He said, "One time, my mom actually turned off the TV and turned and looked at me." And I went, "Oh, snap." Yeah. He remembered that. And that feels good. I said, "How'd it make you feel?" He said, "Like I was important." Right? And
Yeah.
we're so used to people listening to us while they're doing something else.
Mhm.
And I'm guilty of it too. Life is a fast pace, right? And not every conversation needs to be like that, perhaps. But when we're talking about our children, when we're talking about our spouse, our mom, the people that are most important to us, perhaps it does.
Yeah, and that hits hard too when you think about a kid. Like as an adult, we could almost process, okay, she's got a lot going on. She's busy. She had a rough day. She answered me. She heard me. She gave me what I wanted. And it might not give us the feeling we want, but we can sort of wrap it up and understand or explain it away, rationalize it, whatever. But a fourth grader, a child doesn't have that. To a fourth grader, either I'm important to you right now or I'm not. And how many times unintentionally have any of us made kids or people who are really important to us feel that way?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah,
what's
that's had
fascinating to me is the way your listening process works with your, we'll call them clients, I guess. I don't know. That might be the first time they've not been judged.
possible. And it's odd for people to think that they came from an interrogation career. Like you'll be surprised what people will tell you when you don't judge them.
Yes.
It's literally foundational. They are who they for whoever you're interacting with right now, they are being whoever they feel like they need to be at this moment in time based on what they're experiencing through their lens and their expectations. It's not right or wrong.
Yeah.
Let's
Well,
just
that's
take
a
that.
tough thing for most people, right and wrong. So, interestingly enough, the mind, it judges, it's what it does, right? Until we begin to become aware of what we're doing. Discernment is a different thing. So, when we say, "Oh, that's bad, or he's no good," that doesn't even feel good in our own bodies, right? When we say, "Oh, yeah, that's not for me," that doesn't feel so bad, right? So, it's almost a form of self harm, continuing to judge, and we don't realize it.
It's a very interesting perspective
Mm,
because it does tend to keep us emotionally wrapped up in
mm.
whatever we're judging. And then you mentioned the hamster wheel analogy before. That thing is just spinning at that point. You're
For
right.
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So to kind of leap from the fourth grade example, when we think about being able to be present in the moment, when we think about being free from tension, when we think about the mindfulness that comes along with this practice, for people who have learned to be able to achieve it to some degree, How have you seen that improve their personal and professional connections and relationships?
Yeah, everything becomes easier. It just does. When you accept a person where they are, you might not like it. As a leader, you may think, oh my God, I'm paying this person, right? And this is where they are. This is where they are. Once you accept it, you can work with it.
Mhm.
It's like denying the truth when you don't accept it. And you can never work with that. You don't get any, it's like button heads. In a relationship, when your partner feels heard, when you are accepting of your partner versus judging your partner because you wish they were different or whatever that is, love is more available and love comes easier and it flows both ways. And somehow there's just ease in all of it. Does that make sense? It's almost as if something clicks into place. And even in a leadership with your employees or with your teams or at home with your family, with acceptance, we know what to do. We just do. I mean, I experienced it in my own family. I had one of my children, um, you know, anger is sadness's bodyguard. And anger was all he knew how to feel. Things were not as he wanted it to be. There was a lot of frustration. There was a learning challenge he was having, challenges with what he wanted from his older brother that he just wasn't, from his perspective, was reasonable. And really, everybody would love that. But the older brother's a kid. He's only 2 years older than him, right? He's not an adult. So all he expressed was anger. And he would take everybody down with him. And everybody was tense and frustrated and walking on eggshells. And finally, it's interesting because I was using a listening practice. That's one of the reasons why I love your book. And your book is going to become so much more important, Michael, particularly with AI and all of this political strife. And as we try and understand each other, um, listening is just super important. So I was using this listening practice. And as I listened to him and accepted him where he was, I stopped reacting to it. And I stopped telling him he had a reason to be angry or a reason to have this anxiety or a reason. And I just could accept him. And then I could see my own part in how I was feeding what he was feeling instead of helping him overcome it. Once I saw my part, I knew what I needed to do. And it took 2 weeks to make a shift. And the kids started handling things with laughter. And everything started to shift. The whole family shifted. And really, all it took was listening and accepting and being able to be aware of my own mind. Where was I in this whole thing? Right.
Thank you for sharing the story about your own son. It's a great example. I feel like, and especially as it relates our whole life, but to tie it back to kids, our expectations serve as like our first filter. We expect people to behave in certain ways or to talk certain ways or to do certain things. And then as we filter what they say and do through our expectations, if it doesn't fit, we typically react negatively. And
Okay.
we're not reacting negatively because of what they're saying or doing sometimes. What we're reacting negatively to is our expectations have been violated. We don't like that, but we can't often recognize that our expectation was the problem because that would be uncomfortable. Nobody likes that cognitive dissonance. So I'm going to blame it on my kid because definitely the 4-year-old's fault. And I'm going to be upset with him. As my son is still young, but as he's been growing up, one of the things that consistently drove me up a wall sideways is when I would hear a teacher or a parent of a similar age kid or a coach or somebody call a young child disrespectful.
Yeah.
How well developed do you think a 5-year-old's brain is so he can be disrespectful? Like, let's talk about all of the things somebody needs to understand in order to disrespect another human being. So what we're really dealing with here is somebody's expectations of what it means to be respected. then running into an incident of behavior that contradicts those expectations, and then completely ignoring any sense of contextual or situational awareness or childhood development education to understand that a 5-year-old trying to process emotions that they don't understand, can't label, don't get, they could be hungry and tired and have other people around and all these other things. So they behaved in relation to those things, not to disrespect the authority that you have bestowed upon yourself as the hero in this story that you're currently experiencing. So I feel like that ability to step back, and it's okay for people to feel what they feel. Like the emotion isn't wrong. I got this from my wife when it comes to parenting our son. Brooke taught me this. The emotion you're feeling isn't right or wrong. The choice that we have is the behavior that we, for lack of a better word, choose as a result of the emotion that you feel. So I hear her telling our son all the time, it's okay to be angry. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be frustrated. It's
Right.
okay to be embarrassed. Screaming at mom and dad isn't okay. Like, so we're going to address the screaming, but the emotion is fine. So let's work through the emotion first, and then we can come back to understand why we screamed in that situation and what our other alternatives were. And that, I feel like, and I would love your thoughts on this, specifically with kids, but also adults. Like that same approach applies to many management scenarios. It applies to many relationship scenarios where instead of trying to convince somebody that they were wrong for what they felt, no, that was right to them at the time. It was the context that led them there. So as an adult, was there a perception issue? As a kid, that's out the window. But then what do we choose? How do we choose to behave after?
For children, that's exactly kind of where we are, is what you said. So we start with them very young, helping them identify emotions. We see tendency toward addictions as early as second grade. We can see what's going on. And they're having some kind of emotion they don't know what to do with. And they've been told these other things are not appropriate to do, but they don't know what to do because they want to be good. And this is right? I want to be a good kid. So what am I going to do? I'm going to go grab the bag of chips and I'm going to eat the whole thing because I'm worried. I feel some kind of way and I don't know what to do about it. Right. So we're giving them the something to do. And we're trying to teach their caregivers, teachers, nonprofit workers, what this is for themselves so that they can in turn practice with the children. Okay, look, you're feeling some kind of way. Let's breathe through that. And that kid that goes to get the chips after he's kind of experimented with some of these techniques, he can say, okay, and children are willing to try this, right? Adults, no, yeah, not as much. The children are all in because once they feel the relief, they don't have to intellectualize it. They're like, yeah, that felt good. I'll do that. I'm good with that. So now we can use our breath. Let's kind of relieve what we're feeling. And then we can, as they get a little older, parse out where'd that come from? Why is that here? Right? What's this teaching me? What am I trying to understand from this? But really with kids, it's very simple. Is you teach them the practice of meditation, of stillness, and they can do it from kindergarten on. They do it all the time with us. And you teach them breathing practices to help relieve the emotions they're feeling. As they get older, the lessons become a little more sophisticated. We're able to kind of parse out things that are happening in their lives, teaching them a listening practice. What did you discover when you were listening? And oftentimes they're discovering themselves and they're discovering the other. I'll never forget this seventh grader. Do I have time to share this? I'll share
You
this.
sure do.
So we taught him this listening practice and I come back the next week and I said, okay, who used it? And he said, I did. And we work a lot in high trauma environments. We work in regular environments as well, but this happened to be a high trauma school, high poverty. He said, I finally listened to my grandmother. He said she was yelling at me because I didn't do something I was supposed to do, which is normally what she does. She's always yelling at me. And he said, I remember what you said. And I stopped. I took a couple of breaths and I listened fully. And I said, what was she saying? He said, what she was really saying is that she was a single mom all her life, had to do everything herself. Now she's sick. My mom's a single mom. She needs help because my grandmother doesn't want her daughter to end up the way she is. And I have to help her. For a seventh grader, wow. I mean, he really heard what was going on, right? Now, this is not somebody's yelling at me because I didn't do this. Is, oh, we're a family. I got to help. This is actually what I'm doing when I take the trash out, right? I'm not just taking the trash out. That's a whole different way of being and understanding life. And that's what happens in this practice. And children take it up much easier than adults because we're programmed for so long. It's not our fault. We're not bad people. We're just programmed, and people parent the way they were parented because no one's given them another way, or they didn't look for it, or they don't know to look for it, or whatever. So we thought, so in our studio, we do teach mostly adults in those private one-on-one, but then they start bringing their children. So we teach children privately. And with the nonprofit youth meditation, our goal is, how do we get this to all children? How can they have access? They have to take it. We can offer it. They have to take it. We can't force them. But how do we give them the opportunity for that? Right. So did that answer your question? Because I think I might
Yes.
have a rabbit hole and forgot the question.
That's okay. Rabbit holes are kind of what I do best sometimes. So feel
Right?
free to dig your own. We can go wherever you want. Um, that's heavy lifting for a seventh grader to be able to put those steps together. And you, in large part, answered a question that I wanted to ask. I'm going to ask it anyway, in case there's
Sure.
another detail or two out there. But when I think from a parent's perspective, and I think about similar-ish to the story that you just shared, I want my son obviously to grow up to be a happy, healthy, contributing member of society, right? Whatever he chooses to do, he chooses to do. And he's going to have to make his own mistakes and overcome his own mistakes and all of those things. But I would rather him not repeat mine. Like, it's at least as many as I could try to help him get around. And again, Brooke does this far better than I do, but working with him to help him understand what he's feeling, when he's feeling it, why he's feeling it, when it's coming on. So how to kind of interrupt that flight path of the emotions and change things before they happen, or kind of see the big picture. And we've been working on, mostly she, have been working on that with him since day one. And you said something earlier that, in a moment of pure honesty or confession, certainly describes my childhood, and probably beyond that, that anger is the mask of sadness, or the bodyguard of sadness.
Yep.
Right. I mean, that's, you just described my youth to a T. So when I think about my son, he's a different person than me. Thankfully, there's plenty of my wife's DNA in there, and that solves hopefully a lot of the problems. But when I think about helping him identify his emotions and kind of the whole picture, like what caused it, how was I feeling, how did I react, how do I listen, and all of these things. When you teach these classes, what are some of the things that you do, to the degree that you are comfortable sharing them, to really point kids in the right direction to help them identify those things? Because what that seventh grader did was spectacular for somebody his age. Honestly, most adults probably couldn't do that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. I allow them their agency. I give them the practices. I accept them where they are. And all of our instructors are this way. We train them this way. You have to. You never take away a child's agency. They have to choose. And, I had this teacher once in high school. She won National Teacher of the Year that year. And as her student, what I realized was she was not attached to whether or not I performed. She expected it in the way that she gave me the confidence that I could. She was confident in me. You can. Will you? And her expectations were high. And I'll never forget her for that. Low expectations are probably the worst thing we can do for our children. And I don't mean expectations, I expect you to behave this way, do this way. The expectation of you can. The expectation of you can. Most of us parent from fear. And the one thing I can't do when I step into that classroom is be afraid for them that they won't take these lessons, that they won't take these practices and use them, because maybe it's not their time. I don't know. But if I am attached to their outcome, to what they do, I'm stealing their agency and I'm telling them that I should be afraid for you because I don't think you can. But if I walk in there knowing you can, will you? It's here for you. Take it. And maybe if it's not time for you, it's okay. The trouble with being that as a parent is we're so emotionally invested. Most of us parent from fear. And when we do that, we're telling our child, you can't do that. And believe me, they read energy better than anybody. When I step into that classroom, I know every single one of those suckers can detect a fraud.
Yeah.
I don't get to fake it. I really don't. Sometimes in my own house, if I'm in such a way, I'm going to try and fake it. But you can't do it there, right? But I think that that's the biggest thing is we can't be afraid for our children. And it's an effort. It's an effort. The best thing we can do as parents is model this. Take it on for ourselves. Calm our own selves. Use it in our own lives so that we're that grounding force and that stability and that touch point. So when they freak out and they've done something wrong or wish they hadn't or whatever, we're not moved one way or another. It's just a learning.
Yeah.
You got this.
Yeah. I know I probably brag about my family too much. I should probably put
No, I love how you do that.
my son, he's young and he really wanted to do a grappling competition and he did it recently and he did quite well. And as his dad and coach, I had many like goals and hopes and expectations and concerns, right? So right before he's going to go on the mat, he says, Daddy, I got a plan. To be honest, he said, Dad, he's too cool for Daddy now, but he said, Dad. He said, Dad, I got a plan. And I said, okay, what was it? Or what is it? And he told me the first move he was going to do. And I didn't want him to do it because I'd seen him try it in the gym time and time and time and time again. And he is excellent at the first half, but not the second half. So had he asked me, what do you think my plan should be? I would have told him something else that I think he is consistently more successful with. But because he said to me, Daddy, this is my plan. Dad, this is my plan. This is what I'm going to do. Like, my only choice was to look at him right in the face and say, I believe in you. Go do it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. He turned around and walked away. And I looked at my wife and I'm like,
I can't look.
and he executed it flawlessly in every one of his matches. And if it was up to me, I would try to argue from a perspective of love, not fear. I would have steered him another way, but there's a really good argument to be made that it would have been out of fear. I tried to steer him another way. But just it's your choice, bro.
Yeah, but it depends on what you had the focus of giving him the choice, his own agency, his own understanding of what he needed and what he wanted versus wanting the outcome that he win, that he be successful.
Yep.
And you were willing to accept that if he's not, I'm going to deal with that. I'm not going to resist all his emotions about it and all of that. Right. So in life, that's the thing too. If he does some things that you did as a kid, yeah, that's going to suck a little bit. I mean, yeah, I've seen it.
Maybe a lot. Maybe a lot.
But knowing that he's got this, I mean, look where you are. I mean, I really am impressed about the method that you have for listening, what your goal is with the subjects that you're in the room with the human beings and treating them humanly and really looking for the truth. And I think that and you came to that in your own process. Your son's going to come to that. And your faith in him in that will allow him to go off and make his mistakes.
First, that's the plan, but this is the approach. And what you said earlier about giving people the agency and choice and understanding that everything is a coaching moment, everything is a teaching moment. So I was talking to another parent recently, and their kid had just picked up a swear word in school, and we're talking about like elementary school kids. And they came home and they're like, "Oh my God, I heard him say this word. I can't believe he said it." And of course, part of me is like, "Dude, I say that word every day. Like, by the time I take a shower." I probably say that word every day.
Yeah.
But my response was, well, it happened in my house too. And yeah, kind of wish it came about a different way, but it gave me the opportunity to be a parent because it
Yeah.
gave us the opportunity to have a conversation that now sets a precedent for the next time an uncomfortable conversation has to be had based on this experience. But now, if I take moments of disappointment, if I take mistakes, if I take misaligned expectations, if I take failed performance, whatever, and I think about it as it's an opportunity to be a leader. Well, now we're impacting people and situations and relationships and outcomes in a more positive way than looking at it as that was a loss or that was a failure. And when I think about that, like leadership application,
Mhm.
kind of managing difficult conversations on the fly, I probably should have asked you this an hour ago because this is a question that is important to me. I feel like when we go to the meditate when we I've never done it. When people go to the meditation studio, they
Yeah.
are there for a reason with the time and the space and the techniques and the skills and no interruptions to allow it to come to them.
That's right.
But if somebody is in a difficult conversation, emotions are flying, words are flying, all these things are happening. I imagine being able to find that freedom of tension, even for a moment, creates clarity in how we can almost do what that seventh grader did. Nope, this is what the real problem is. This is how I address it. It's not personal. This is who they need to be at the time. How can we help people apply these techniques that work awesome in a controlled environment to moments in very dynamic environments?
Well, so here's how it works. So, if you go to the gym and you go once a week at the end of the month, you're probably just going to be proud of yourself once a week and a little sore. You're probably not going to come out with much, right? But if you go 5 times a week, the end of the month, whatever you went for, you're going to get it. Whether it be more speed or, better body or just healthier cardio, whatever that is, right? It's the same in meditation. While you don't have a goal in meditation, the practice of being able to sit, of being able to find that relaxed state, your body begins to find its homeostasis. It begins to find that natural state of rest and peace. And now that starts to develop and it begins to take over. Most of us are in fight or flight, right? I mean, we're all on heightened alert all the time. There's so much. We're tired, we're overworked, we're so many things coming at us all the time. Once our bodies start to remember that state, it grows, it compounds upon itself. And as you practice the mindfulness practices that we teach, also, so we're in a controlled environment once a week for an hour, but then you're practicing this each week with a mindfulness technique as well. When you do that, the windows open. You start to shift your perspectives. You start to see things. You start to get that state of rest and peacefulness and know what it feels like. And then it starts to compound and your body begins to take over in that state. So when that thing happens, now you're in that place, much like that seventh grader. That person's cussing, they're having and everything's going to, where in a handbasket, and you're still. And you can accept where we are. And once you accept it, and once you let that person get it all out, you can see what the real issue is. And then now you can deal with it. It doesn't have to be this contentious thing. That's the leadership. But the leadership comes with modeling. As a parent, as a leader, I'm still trying myself. I'm still learning. There's no there. It's all practice, right? And so that's what it is. And it's all about the self. It's not about the other person. It's all about the self.
And if you see me look away while you were talking, it's because I'm taking notes. And I'm now like taking notes in between lines where I've taken other notes because I'm out of space. So I appreciate all that you shared. And I think that concept, the last two things I just wrote down, that it's it's there's no there. It's just the practice. And so I think that's very powerful and translates to lots of things in life. Like
That
there's,
everything.
there's no like I wake up tomorrow and it's all done, it's all accomplished, it's all there. Like no, that never is going to happen. Um, and that it's about us, it's about the self, but maybe counterintuitively, by making it about ourself, we can be more unselfish in how we serve other people.
Oh, for sure. I mean, is someone that shows up in full presence and acceptance always impacts someone else in a better way, even if they don't do anything. And sometimes that's what's required. Sometimes the requirement is just to be the mom or the leader who turned off the TV or closed the computer and just heard you. And in bearing witness to what you had to say and being there with you. Sometimes that's enough relief. Sometimes that's all that we need.
I love it. And I can't thank you enough for all that you have shared in this conversation today. Tons of great perspective that hopefully has people not just looking at the concept of meditation or specifically mindfulness meditation differently, but also looking at how they show up and how they perceive and how they model and how they interpret what is going on around them, hopefully to find that freedom from tension and to
Mm.
help others, even just in brief moments, find that freedom of tension as well. I know you teach, I know you work with adults, I know you work with kids. So for people who are listening to this conversation and they're like, I want to know more, how
Yeah.
can people connect with you?
Well, they can connect with us at charlottemeditation.com. And so we do have a studio here locally, but we also teach internationally and nationally over Zoom. And Youth Meditation is our nonprofit for children. We do private one on ones with children through that nonprofit. And we also teach in communities, schools, nonprofits, that sort of thing, anywhere where children are gathered. So they can connect with us here.
But it's fantastic work. And like I said, I'm especially maybe because, well, not just because I'm a dad. I mean, I started out as a teacher, so I guess I'm kind of predisposed to want to take care of kids. Um, but the work in the high trauma environments that you do, how many, and you know better than me, but how many of those kids get labeled? How many of those kids get pushed aside? How many of those kids get treated a certain way for their whole life? And then that just frames not just how they see the world, but how they see themselves and leads them down a path that they didn't choose and can't escape. So the work that you're doing there really is tremendous. And I truly appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's good work. I'm happy to be doing it. It's a gift to me.
Thank you so much. It's always great to talk
Hey,
to you. I
Michael.
appreciate you being here. I know these conversations will continue. So please take care, stay safe, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
You as well. Thanks so much for having me.
Angela, thank you so much for a wonderful conversation. I appreciate all of the stories that you shared, your personal experience, and all of the examples for the adults and the children that you work with so we can all look for opportunities to apply it in our professional lives, our personal lives, our family lives, of course, with our children as well. My wife, son, and I will certainly be applying some of the things that we spoke about today. So thank you so much. And I try to think about the powerful things that you said. We could replay the whole conversation, but just the concept of freeing ourselves from tension and the impact that that could have on us long term, but even in just moments during difficult conversations, if we can quickly relieve that tension and refocus, moving past judgment and self-harm, another tremendous idea. And honestly, when you said the quote, anger is sadness's bodyguard, that resonated very well with me based on personal experience and things I've seen with other people. So I think that's so important to remember. Anger is sadness's bodyguard. And I also loved when you said there is no there. There's no destination. It's all about the process. And what we get from the process is the most important thing. And I really appreciate you sharing all of those thoughts for you today. Thank you for the time that you spent with us. And thank you for that all you do, especially on the youth meditation side with the children. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody that took the time to listen to us today. I truly appreciate you being here, sharing another hour or so with us for another conversation. Thank you so much for coming back week after week for these conversations. Before we go, let's thank our sponsors one more more time, HumanTell. Please head over to humantel.com and enter the code Inquasive25 for 25% off their best-in-class online training to learn how to recognize when people's emotions are shifting in real time by evaluating their facial expressions and body language. Again, I've done it all myself. I highly recommend it. Enter the code Inquasive25 for 25% off the training of your choice at humantel.com. For the professional interviewers, head over to certifiedinterviewer.com and check out the International Association of Interviewers. That's where you can learn what it takes to become a member at the individual and organizational level, the events you can attend online and in person, the educational opportunities, the networking opportunities, so much more. That's also where you can get all of your questions answered about the Certified Forensic Interviewer designation. What does it take to qualify? How do you earn the designation? How do you maintain the designation? What is involved in the process? What could it mean for your career? All those questions and more answered at certifiedinterviewer.com. And while you are online, please head over to inquasive.com. That's where you can learn more about the customized programs our clients ask us to teach their senior leaders, sales teams, and HR teams, to teach them essentially the strategic observation and persuasion skills necessary to encourage people to share their everyday confessions. Uncover the hidden value that can make all the difference in the world in our professional and personal conversations. Again, thank you so much for being here. We truly appreciate it. Please, before you go, take a second to like the show, share the show, subscribe to the show, share us your feedback. We'd love to hear and give you more of what you are looking for. Thank you all so very much. Stay safe, take care of each other, and we'll see you next time.